3, 2.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Sumter School District Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. And those of you who are present tonight, good evening. And those who are watching virtually, good evening. I'd like to begin our meeting and open our meeting with a meditative thought. Thank you. Now we'll have our pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I call our meeting to order, and we have present tonight to my left, Trustee Brown Austin and Cheryl Ray, and to my right, Trustee Mac McLeod, and we also have our superintendent, Dr. Martin Knox, and we also have Sam Myers, who is our executive director of operations, and Brian Jones, who is our lead transportation supervisor. And again, thank all of y'all for coming tonight and being a part of this ad hoc committee. At this time, without any disapproval, could we have the approval of the agenda by consensus? Okay, I take that as approval of the agenda. Thank you. Now we'll move to item 3, review of transportation. And Dr. Martin Knox, at this time we're going to yield to you, and then you to your support staff as you see fit.
Yes, sir. So good evening, Chairman Baker, members of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. This evening we will share information as it pertains to the reopening of Sumter School District schools for our children. As you know, at the onset of the pandemic, our ultimate goal has been to return our students to face-to-face instruction. As we know, the best way to educate children is in the capacity where they are interacting with their peers while receiving instruction in the traditional brick and mortar of school as we know it. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, we have had to really give consideration as to the best way in which to do that. We have offered instruction from a virtual capacity, from a hybrid capacity, and most recently moving closer and closer to the 5 days of face-to-face. Currently, our students are learning on the hybrid model, which was designed strategically so that we could adhere to the 6 feet social distance requirement from the CDC guidelines and from DHEC, while also making sure our students are safe on our buses. The original guidance and guidelines from the onset of the pandemic is to have our buses only filled with 50% of our children. That would have presented a struggle had we had more students who returned back to school in the hybrid approach. During the pandemic as well, the guidelines were shifted from 50% to 67%, to 67%. But again, because we were only receiving a little under 16% of our students for instruction in their traditional brick and mortar, we did not have that challenge. As we're moving closer and closer to our 5-day goal, we still have students who will be returning the 12th of April for 4 days a week instruction, and then, the following week on the 19th, students will return for 5 days a week face-to-face. We are continuing to look at ways in which we could offer not only safe instruction in the traditional school classroom, but also making sure we adhere to the transportation guidelines. As we know it again, the transportation guidelines indicate that we should have 67% of our students on the buses while still maintaining the social distance of 3 feet when students return to school. However, we will continue to put mitigating factors in to place, such as shields and the requirement of mask wearing, washing of the hands, respiratory protection, such as covering our mouths with the forearm of our bodies, and just making sure that if we are not feeling well, that we remain home during that time. I will allow the opportunity for Mr. Myers and Mr. Jones to talk about some of the things that we put in place for safe transporting of our children on our school buses. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Myers and or Mr. Jones to share any information with the ad hoc committee as it pertains to the transporting of our children.
Okay. Thank you and good evening.
Good evening.
We do have a continual process as far as our students wearing masks on the bus, and all students are still required to do so. We have increased the capacity, as Dr. Martin Knox indicated, from 50% to 67%. And I'm giving you somewhat of a snapshot of that. A bus that has total capacity of 78, it now goes, which was 39, now it goes to 52 students. And we are working very closely with making sure those students are 3 feet apart. And the drivers have continued to wear their masks and making sure that if a student enters the bus without one, that they have adequate supply to make sure that they have those. The buses do have the shield that's behind the driver's seat in case there's a student that's sitting in that area. They are protected from the driver and the driver from them as well. I'm going to ask Mr. Jones to talk about the increase in the number of students that we have transported, and he can share some other things as well. Mr. Jones?
All right, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Myers. We also, some of the safety precautions or measures we're taking is the exits in the top of the bus. They're open, and we put at least 3 or 4 windows down on each side to also provide adequate fresh air inside of the bus. Our drivers, they do spray their buses after every route. They have the COVID spray, and they go through the bus. They spray the high touch areas such as the handrails, the doors, the seats, and the driver's equipment. We spray those after every route. On Wednesdays, we do what we call deep cleaning. We go back and we make sure that everything is taken care of. As far as the current increase in students, we keep a track every day. Our total today was for Area 1 was about 402, as opposed to about 249. Area 2, which would be the Sumter High area, which is 630 today, as opposed to about 263 students. And Area 3 was about 328 today, as opposed to about 195.
And so we'll continue to monitor those numbers as again we get closer and closer to returning our students again back to our schools. Mr. Myers and Mr. Jones, I just want to commend them because just providing the training for our employees to safeguard our students by using the static sprayers on the buses, while also managing and maintaining their own safety. When you have a vast number of individuals that are constantly transitioning on and off the bus, our drivers have to maintain safety as well as our attendants. And I will also add, and I do believe it's relevant to this ad hoc committee, that although we had not been running all of our buses and all of our routes, we found additional opportunities to ensure that we did not, and I repeat, did not lay off any of our drivers. We have provided them with additional opportunities throughout our schools and throughout the district to ensure that we are looking out for our individual staff. And while we continue to make these transitions back again to the traditional aspect of transporting our children, we are still finding additional opportunities for our drivers to work within the district as opposed to going outside and outsourcing. So I just want to commend these two gentlemen, and if anyone has not seen the video, they are on a portal on our COVID tab on our website, those parameters that have been put in place to ensure our students are safe. And again, the language has been loosened just a little but we will continue to, as much as we possibly can, ensure that we are operating at 67%, as opposed to packing children into a bus and putting our children in harm's way as well as our staff. And so that's where we are in terms of preparation for reopening the school.
Very good, thank you, thank you. Yes, questions?
I was just wondering, have there been any issues with the students, getting in the correct seats or wearing masks, or has that gone very smoothly, or could you kind of share that with us?
Certainly. We've had a number of students who've been on the buses, and we haven't had any major issues. Just like anywhere else, the mask may become a little irritating to some and they may take it down. However, the drivers have addressed those students and have not had anything that has come through as far as a disciplinary issue that we've been made aware of, and some of the things that the schools have addressed. But for the most part, all has gone pretty well. Anything to the contrary, Mr.
Well,
Jones?
that basically sums it up. We've marked our seats for the elementary level, to make it a little easier for them to identify where to sit here, please sit here, please do not sit here. So that was another measure that we took earlier to make sure that the students would know where to sit.
Okay, good.
And I will say that many of our schools, the administrators and additional staff have assisted with getting students on the appropriate bus and ensuring that they're safely seated as they enter into the bus drop-off or as they exit for the day. So it has truly been a collaborative effort. But I will say our children have been doing a really good job. When you go into school, they have their little masks on, and it just makes me smile that they have understood the importance of wearing their masks and wearing them appropriately. And I just want to commend our parents and our guardians for reinforcing the importance of wearing the mask, but they've been doing a really good job.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Myers and Mr. Jones, you spoke of the exits and the windows being down. In the event of a rainy day, how would that look as far as the ventilation on the bus?
Well, we still have air conditioning units on most of our buses, if not all. We do run those, and again, some of the buses, they're equipped where there's a little lever, so we can still put it to the first notch to still get some type of ventilation in the bus.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to follow up on your comment about the air conditioning, Brian. So roughly how many buses do we have that are not equipped with air conditioning?
We have about, in percentage, maybe 10% now.
Oh, very good. Very good. Okay. All right, any further questions?
Yeah, I do.
No.
Well, how many students have we been averaging so far?
As far as on our buses,
Yeah.
we've been, the most that we've had, we've been doing about 23, 25 with the 39 capacity.
Okay.
With it up this week, the most that we've had is about 41.
Okay.
And that was monitored by, one of the Pacala buses.
Okay.
And one of the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And one of the things that we've been monitoring as well, because there's guidance that is specific to students who live in the same home.
Right.
That number, to your question, could vary as we have students who may be three, that can sit 3 to a seat or 2 to a seat because they're coming from the same home. So there's some flexibility there in terms of the number of individuals who are on the bus. So I just wanted to make sure with those numbers that are given, it could increase or decrease depending on those factors. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask, with the surveys that you put out, how many are we anticipating that will actually be coming on the 5-day-a-week schedule, April 19th? Do you have?
So I do not have a definitive number at this point. The schools actually did the surveys instead of the district doing the surveys, pushing out, because we know our parents are more responsive to their individual schools. But I can definitely get those numbers for you as we're anticipating going closer to the 5 days a week. I can do that.
And a follow-up to that, Mr. Myers and Brian, when we do go to 5 days a week, what's our backup plan if we are exceeding that 67%?
The backup plan is to do the best we can with placing students. We know that we still have that 3 foot measuring, but we've also talked about having an additional bus available to go to that area to pick up those extra students. So it's, we won't know until
Yeah.
when we get there.
Yeah, that's what I was
And we
saying.
monitor and
You
adjust.
can plan as best you can, but you don't know when that time comes.
Absolutely.
Well, I was curious if we got a backup plan, and I was thinking it would almost have to be an extra bus.
Absolutely. So we're almost masters at monitoring and adjusting, so.
And I certainly hope y'all do have to use that backup plan. I don't see these kids back in school, so I hope y'all have to use that backup plan. Okay, any other questions? All right, that brings us down to, number 4 and 4.1. And we will need to go into executive session. So could I have a motion to that effect?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we enter into executive session for the purpose of discussion of personnel and proposed contractual matters.
Second.
Show of hands. When you're ready to vote, just show of hands.
All right,
If you wanna repeat the motion, Governor.
yes. The motion was to enter into executive session for discussion of personnel and proposed contractual matters. Matter singular. Okay, and it's
Unanimous.
unanimous, okay. And to our folks that are viewing, I do not know how long we'll be in executive session, but we will expedite as quickly as possible. And if you want to stay tuned, we will certainly come back on once we have finished. And at this time, we will, and at this point, our committee has no recommendations to make to our board. And this will move us down to our consent agenda and approval of the minutes. And my closing remarks, I want to thank everyone for participating tonight.
On consensus, is the agenda, is the, consent agenda approved?
Approved, by consensus, I assume.
No objections?
Any objection? Okay. Again, thank everyone for participating here on the committee, and those of you who are viewing virtually, thank you for your participation. And at this time, our committee will stand adjourned.